Emma Collins stepped out of the crowded London Underground station into the chilly November air, clutching the worn leather strap of her handbag tightly. The muffled sounds of the city buzzed around her, hurried footsteps, distant car horns, snippets of conversation in a dozen languages, but Emma's mind was focused on one thing: starting over. After years of struggling to keep afloat as a single mother, she had finally found a small, modest flat in East London, and with it, the opportunity to open her own little cafe. The cozy corner wasn't much, just a small space with cracked wooden floors and peeling paint, but it was hers. And to Emma, that meant the world. Behind her, Lucas, her 7-year-old son, tugged on her sleeve, eyes wide with excitement. "Mom, will we meet new friends? Will I have a place to play?" His voice held hope, unspoiled by the hardships they had endured. Emma smiled, ruffling his dark hair. "We'll make this our home, Lucas. Together." The building housing the cafe was old, its bricks stained by years of London rain, but it had character. Upstairs lived James Anderson, the building's owner, a man Emma had met only once when signing the lease. A successful businessman in his 40s, James was known in the neighborhood as somewhat aloof, often seen arriving late in a sleek car and leaving before dawn. As Emma turned the key and pushed open the door to the empty cafe, the musty smell of neglect greeted her.
Dust moth danced in the pale light filtering through the grimy windows.
This was the blank canvas on which she would paint her new life. The next few days were a whirlwind of cleaning, painting, and setting up. Emma spent hours scrubbing floors and arranging shelves. Lucas helped as best as he could, sweeping crumbs and carrying small boxes with his bright, eager hands. Despite the physical exhaustion, Emma felt a surge of hope every time she imagined customers sitting at the little tables, sipping coffee and laughing softly. This place, humble and imperfect, was a sanctuary, a place where she and Lucas could finally breathe. One chilly afternoon, James appeared at the cafe unexpectedly. He wore a tailored wool coat, and his eyes, usually guarded, softened as he watched Emma maneuver a heavy crate of coffee beans. "You've done a good job here," he said, voice low but sincere. Emma wiped sweat from her brow, startled by his presence. "Thank you. I'm just getting started." James stepped inside, taking in the faded wallpaper and the scent of fresh paint. "If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." There was something in his tone that suggested more than just polite landlord concern. Emma caught a glimpse of vulnerability behind his polished exterior, a flicker of loneliness she recognized all too well.
"Lucas, curieux and unafraid, wander d'over."
"Are you going to be my new neighbor?" he asked, eyes bright. James smiled, crouching down to Lucas's level. "Looks like it." In that moment, Emma saw a possibility. Perhaps this new chapter wasn't just about survival, but about connection. As the autumn leaves drifted past the cafe window, Emma felt a cautious but growing warmth settle in her heart. The road ahead would be far from easy. Balancing the demands of running a business and raising a child alone was daunting. Yet, surrounded by peeling paint and the promise of fresh starts, Emma Collins was determined to build more than a cafe. She was determined to build a life. And somewhere upstairs, James Anderson watched quietly, wondering if this new beginning might change his own story as well.
Phần đầu tiên đã hoàn chỉnh với khoảng 1.100 từ, mang bối cảnh Anh, Mỹ, phong cách kể chuyện chân thực và cảm xúc. Bạn muốn mình tiếp tục với phần 2 không?
The days that followed were a blur of motion and emotion for Emma Collins. Opening the cozy corner was both a dream realized and a relentless challenge. The morning chill seeped through the thin walls of the small cafe as Emma wiped down the countertops, her muscles aching but her spirit unwavering. Lucas sat at a corner table, coloring in a worn-out notebook, his small face lighting up whenever a customer smiled or complimented the warm atmosphere Emma was creating. For the first time in years, Emma felt a quiet pride watching her son settle into this new life, a life shaped not by struggle, but by hope. The neighborhood was a mosaic of cultures, young professionals, families, and long-time residents. The cafe became a small refuge for them all, a place where an elderly woman sipped her tea in peace, a group of university students gathered over books, and the neighborhood's workers grabbed a quick espresso before starting their shifts. Emma knew every customer's name within weeks and greeted each one with a warmth that softened even the coldest London mornings. Yet, despite the modest success, the weight of responsibility never lifted. Bills stacked up, suppliers called for payments, and Lucas's school fees loomed. Amidst all this, James Anderson emerged more frequently. His visits began as occasional drop-ins to check on the property, but soon became moments where Emma found unexpected support. One rainy afternoon, as Emma struggled to fix a leaking tap, James showed up with a toolbox and calm hands. "I've got this," he said with quiet confidence. Together, they worked in the cramped space behind the cafe, the sound of dripping water echoing off the tile walls. Their hands brushed accidentally as they passed tools, and both felt a subtle flutter, a delicate beginning neither dared to name. Lucas, for his part, quickly took a liking to James. The man's gentle demeanor and easy smile made him feel safe, and Lucas eagerly awaited his visits, often bringing along drawings or books to share. "Mom, James is like a superhero," Lucas declared one evening as they closed up shop. "He fixes everything and even tells funny stories." Emma smiled, her heart softening. Perhaps James was more than just a landlord after all. Yet, beneath the surface, both Emma and James wrestled with their own fears. Emma was haunted by the shadows of past relationships that had left scars and doubts. Could she trust again? Could she risk her heart, especially with someone so different, so successful and guarded? James, too, was no stranger to loneliness. Widowed young, he had immersed himself in work, building a business empire but shutting out intimacy. Emma's resilience and warmth stirred feelings he had long suppressed, but he hesitated to break down the walls he had built for so long. Their conversations became layered with meaning, small glances, shared laughter, moments of vulnerability. One evening, after closing, they stood outside the cafe, the city's lights twinkling around them. "I never expected to find someone like you," James said softly. Emma looked up, searching his eyes. "Neither did I." But the distance remained, not physical but emotional, a space guarded by caution and past pain. Despite the hesitations, the bond between them deepened. Emma's cafe flourished slowly but steadily, and James became a silent partner in her success, sometimes helping with repairs, sometimes offering advice, always present in a way that felt comforting. Lucas, ever perceptive, sensed the change too. One afternoon, as Emma and James discussed new menu ideas, Lucas tugged at Emma's sleeve. "Mom, do you think James will stay forever?" Emma glanced at James, who smiled warmly. She felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something lasting. But life in London was unpredictable. Just as Emma began to believe in this fragile happiness, the past lurked nearby, ready to resurface and challenge everything they were building. For now though, the three of them, Emma, Lucas and James, were finding their rhythm. The cozy corner wasn't just a cafe anymore, it was a place of new beginnings, tentative trust, and the slow weaving of a family. As the fog rolled in over the city, the light inside the cafe burned bright, a beacon against the uncertainty of tomorrow.
Phần 2 đã hoàn thành, tiếp nối mạch truyện rõ ràng, phát triển nhân vật và mối quan hệ giữa họ. Bạn có muốn mình viết phần 3 ngay không?
As winter deepened, the rhythm at the cozy corner settled into a comforting routine. Emma's cafe had become a beloved nook in the East London community, warm lights glowing against the bleak December days, the scent of freshly ground coffee drifting through the streets. But beneath the surface of this small success, a delicate tension began to build between Emma and James. Their interactions, once purely practical and respectful, edged toward something more personal, the unspoken feelings that neither dared to fully acknowledge. One crisp morning, James arrived earlier than usual. The sky was a pale grey, the city wrapped in a quiet hush that only winter could bring. Emma was behind the counter, preparing pastries when she caught sight of James through the window. He looked different today, less guarded, more open, as if the cold air had thawed some of his usual reserve. "Morning, James," Emma greeted, brushing flour off her hands. "Morning, Emma. Busy day ahead." He stepped inside, the bell chiming softly. "Always," she replied, forcing a smile. The cafe filled quickly, as usual, but Emma couldn't shake the feeling that today would be different. Throughout the morning, James found moments to stay close, leaning in to ask about Lucas, or offering to help restock supplies. His presence was comforting, yet charged, like electricity in the air just before a storm. After closing, Emma was locking the door when James lingered by the window. "Can I talk to you?" he asked quietly. Emma hesitated, the weight of unspoken emotions pressing down. "Sure." They walked to the small park across the street, the bare trees casting long shadows under the streetlights. The cold bit into their faces, but the silence between them was warmer than the winter air. James broke it first. "I don't want to lose what we have. But I'm scared. Emma looked at him, surprise flickering in her eyes. Scared of what? Scared of failing. Of opening up and getting hurt again. Emma's heart softened. She reached out, brushing her hand lightly against his arm. I'm scared too. But sometimes, the biggest risk is not taking any. The tension snapped, and they leaned into each other. The first kiss was hesitant but charged with all the longing that had been building for weeks. For a moment, the world around them fell away. The loneliness, the fear, everything melted into the quiet night. But reality returned quickly. Emma pulled back, breathing hard. We need to be careful. James nodded. I know. But I don't want to hide anymore. They agreed to take it slow, to let the relationship grow naturally. For Lucas, James became more than a friend, a steady presence, a figure of kindness and laughter. The boy's eyes sparkled whenever James came around, and Emma found herself watching the two with a mixture of gratitude and hope. Yet, even as their bond strengthened, shadows loomed. One afternoon, while Emma was preparing lunch, a sleek black car pulled up outside. From it stepped Sarah, James's ex-wife. She moved with an air of confidence, the kind that had once captivated James and complicated his life. Sarah's arrival disrupted the fragile balance Emma and James had built. With a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, she approached the cafe door. Inside, Emma felt the temperature drop. She recognized Sarah immediately, the woman James had spoken of only in passing, the ghost from a past he had tried to bury. James appeared just then, face tightening when he saw Sarah. Sarah, he said, voice clipped. What are you doing here? Sarah's smile remained. Just thought I'd stop by. See how the place is doing, and how you're doing. Emma stepped forward, extending her hand. I'm Emma. Sarah's eyes flicked to Emma's hand, then back to her face, measuring and cold. I know who you are. James glanced between the two women, the tension thickening. This isn't a good time, he said, gently but firmly. Sarah's gaze lingered on Emma a moment longer before she turned on her heel. I'm sure we'll be seeing more of each other, Emma. The door closed behind her, leaving a silence that screamed. Emma's hands trembled slightly. James reached for hers, squeezing gently. We'll face this, he promised. Together. But Emma knew this was just the beginning. The past wasn't ready to let go, and their new life hung in a fragile balance between hope and uncertainty. The days following Sarah's unexpected visit to the cozy corner were thick with unspoken tension. Emma found herself watching James more closely, searching his face for clues, signs of lingering feelings or hidden worries. The comfortable rhythm they had begun to build seemed fragile now, like a glass teetering on the edge of a table. One rainy evening, after closing the cafe, Emma sat at a small table near the window, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. James entered quietly, shaking off his coat, the weight of the day evident in his posture. We need to talk, he said, voice low. Emma nodded, bracing herself. He pulled out a chair and sat across from her, eyes serious. Sarah's not just visiting. She wants something, I'm not sure what yet, but it's complicated. Emma swallowed hard. What kind of complicated? James sighed, running a hand through his hair. She's demanding access to certain business documents. Threatening legal action if I don't comply. It's old stuff from before I met you, but it's putting everything at risk. Emma's mind raced. The cafe, their future, Lucas, all potentially caught in a storm she hadn't anticipated. I won't let her hurt us, James promised, reaching across the table to take her hand. Emma felt a flicker of hope but also a surge of fear. I believe you, she said softly, but we need to be ready for whatever comes. Over the next weeks, James was consumed by the legal battle. The strain showed in his tired eyes, in the way he sometimes snapped at small frustrations. Emma tried to support him, balancing her own worries with the demands of the cafe and caring for Lucas. Lucas, perceptive beyond his years, asked one evening as they sat together by the fire, Mom, why is James so sad sometimes? Emma hugged him tightly. Because grown-ups have problems too, sweetheart. But we're all here for each other. One afternoon, Emma discovered a letter slipped under the cafe door. It was from Sarah's lawyer, a formal notice that complicated things even more. The letter threatened to freeze James's assets, including the building that housed the cafe. Panic rose in Emma's chest. Without the building, their dream could collapse. James arrived shortly after, face grim when Emma showed him the letter. "We'll fight this," he vowed. "No matter what." Emma nodded, feeling the weight of their shared battle. Amid the turmoil, Emma and James found moments of fragile peace, a shared meal, a quiet walk, a smile exchanged over the clinking of coffee cups. Their connection, tested by external forces, grew stronger. But the strain took its toll. One evening, a heated argument erupted between them. "You don't understand how hard this is for me," James said, voice rising. "And you don't understand what it's like to build something from nothing," Emma shot back. The words hung heavy in the air. Both felt wounded, both afraid of losing what they had. Later in silence, Emma whispered, "We have to remember why we're fighting. For us. For Lucas." James reached out, brushing a tear from her cheek. "You're right. We'll get through this." The legal battle dragged on, testing their resolve, but also revealing depths of loyalty and love neither had expected. The café remained a sanctuary amid the chaos, a symbol of hope and new beginnings. Emma stood behind the counter one morning, watching Lucas play with James in the corner. For all the uncertainty, she knew one thing clearly: they were no longer alone. Together, they would face whatever came next. Winter's grip tightened on London, and with it, the pressure on Emma and James mounted. The legal battle waged by Sarah's lawyers was relentless, a constant shadow over the café and their fragile relationship. Emma felt the strain creeping into every corner of her life, the endless paperwork, the mounting bills, the worry etched on James's face. One particularly cold evening, as snowflakes drifted silently against the streetlights, Emma arrived at the café to find James sitting alone, his head in his hands. The usual spark in his eyes was dimmed by exhaustion and frustration. "I don't know how much more I can take," he confessed quietly. Emma sat beside him, the warmth of her presence a small comfort. "We're in this together," she said firmly. "We'll find a way." But the cracks were showing. That night, after Lucas was asleep, they sat across from each other in the quiet apartment James rented nearby. The conversation that followed was painful but necessary. "I'm scared," Emma admitted. "What if we lose everything? The café, the building, our future?" James reached out, taking her hands in his. "I'm scared too. But running away won't help." They talked long into the night, sharing fears they had kept hidden. The vulnerability deepened their bond, but it also exposed raw wounds. The next day, the tension boiled over. A harsh word from James about the legal fight, a sharp retort from Emma about his guardedness, and suddenly, the walls they had built around their hearts crumbled. The argument escalated, voices raised, frustrations unleashed. "You're always so distant," Emma accused. "Like you don't trust me." James's eyes flashed. "Maybe it's because I'm trying to protect us." "Protect us by shutting me out?" she shot back. "That's not love, James. That's fear." The silence that followed was deafening. Both knew the fight was about more than just legal troubles. It was about their pasts, their insecurities, and the risks of opening up to someone again. Days passed with strained conversations and forced smiles. Lucas sensed the shift, retreating into himself. Emma watched her son's withdrawn behavior with a heavy heart. One afternoon, Lucas approached her, eyes shining with childlike clarity. "Mom, are you and James okay?" Emma knelt, holding his face gently. "We're working on it, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups have to figure things out." Lucas nodded, but the worry lingered. Meanwhile, Sarah's presence continued to loom. She escalated her demands, dragging James further into legal turmoil. The threat of foreclosure on the building became very real. James confided in Emma one night, his voice breaking. "If I lose this, I lose everything. And I don't know what happens to us." Emma took his hand, steadying him. "Then we fight harder." Together, they began to strategize, consulting lawyers, gathering evidence, and rallying community support. The café's loyal customers showed up not just for the coffee but to support the little business that had become their shared haven. Despite the mounting stress, Emma and James made a promise: no matter what happened, they would face it as a team. The road was far from smooth. Nights were sleepless. Days were filled with endless phone calls and meetings. Yet amidst the chaos, small moments of tenderness remained: a shared cup of coffee, a soft touch, a smile exchanged across a crowded room. One evening, as they closed the cafe, James looked at Emma with tired eyes but a determined smile. "We'll get through this. For Lucas. For us." Emma returned the smile, feeling a flicker of hope. But fate had one more challenge in store. A sudden letter arrived, confirming that Sarah had taken the first step toward freezing the building's assets. The deadline to respond was imminent. Emma stared at the letter, heart pounding. The dream they had built was hanging by a thread. James held her close, whispering, "Whatever happens, you and Lucas come first." Emma nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. They stood together in the quiet cafe, the weight of uncertainty pressing down, but their hands tightly clasped, a silent vow to hold on come what may. Winter lingered, but the spirit inside the cozy corner refused to wane. Emma and James had entered a new phase, one defined not just by challenges, but by the quiet resilience they nurtured together. The legal battle with Sarah's lawyers became an unyielding storm, threatening to tear apart the life they had slowly built. Each day brought new setbacks, new demands, and the looming threat of foreclosure grew closer with every passing week. Yet, in the midst of chaos, Emma and James found strength in each other. One morning, Emma arrived early at the cafe, the cold air biting her cheeks. She flipped the sign to open, and took a deep breath. The warmth of the room, the familiar scent of coffee and fresh pastries, offered a small comfort, a reminder that this place, no matter what, was their sanctuary. James joined her moments later, carrying a stack of legal documents and a tired smile. "Got some news," he said, setting the papers down. Emma looked up, bracing herself. "Not great," James admitted. "Sarah's team is pushing harder. They want to freeze the entire property." Emma's heart sank, but she met his gaze steadily.
We can't give up now.
"We have to keep fighting." James nodded, admiring her unwavering spirit. Their days became a blur of meetings with lawyers, late-night phone calls, and painstaking reviews of documents. Emma balanced running the cafe and caring for Lucas, often falling asleep at the kitchen table after putting him to bed. Lucas noticed the tension but also the determination in his mother's eyes. One evening, as they sat together coloring in his notebook, he looked up and said softly, "Mom will be okay, right?" Emma smiled, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. "We will, Lucas. We have to be strong." Amid the storm, James made a surprising gesture. He began spending more time at the cafe, not just as landlord, but as partner. He helped with deliveries, fixed broken chairs, and even took orders when Emma was overwhelmed. One afternoon, as a rush of customers poured in, James moved behind the counter with a steady hand. Emma watched him, feeling a warmth that went beyond gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. James smiled. "We're in this together." Despite the external battles, cracks began to show inside their relationship. The stress brought moments of frustration and doubt. One rainy night, after a particularly tense day, Emma confronted James. "I feel like I'm carrying everything," she said, voice trembling. "I need you, not just as a helper, but as a partner." James looked at her, pain flickering in his eyes. "I'm scared of failing you," he confessed. "I don't want to lose what we've built." Emma reached out, taking his hand. "We'll only lose it if we don't try. Together." The weeks that followed saw a shift. They learned to communicate better, to share burdens instead of hiding them. James opened up about his fears and vulnerabilities, while Emma allowed herself to lean on him more. Their connection deepened, not through grand gestures, but in everyday moments, a shared glance, a gentle touch, a word of encouragement. Lucas thrived in this atmosphere of renewed hope. He laughed more, played freely, and called James uncle with affection. Then came the day of the court hearing. Emma and James sat side by side, hands entwined, as the judge listened to arguments from both sides. Hours passed like an eternity. When the decision finally came, the judge ruled in their favor. Sarah's claims were dismissed due to lack of evidence. Relief flooded the room. Emma and James exchanged a look, a mixture of exhaustion, disbelief, and joy. Outside the courthouse, James pulled Emma into a tight embrace. "We did it," he whispered. Emma smiled through tears. "Together." Back at the cafe, news of their victory spread quickly. Loyal customers and neighbors came to celebrate, filling the space with laughter and warmth. Emma looked around, the faces glowing with happiness. In that moment, she realized that the cozy corner was more than a business. It was a testament to resilience, love, and community. James approached her, slipping a small box into her hand. "What's this?" she asked, surprised. He smiled shyly. "A promise. That no matter what comes next, I'm here."
For you, for Lucas, for US.
Emma opened the box to find a simple silver ring. Her eyes met his, heart full. "Yes," she said softly. "Yes to everything." As winter slowly gave way to spring, the cafe blossomed, just like their relationship. They were no longer just two people trying to survive, they were building a family, brick by brick.
Emma watched Lucas playing with James in the corner, sunlight streaming through the windows, painting everything gold.
And for the first time in a long time, she felt truly at home. Spring had arrived in London, painting the city with fresh colors and new beginnings. The once grey skies gave way to clear blue, and the streets outside the cozy corner buzzed with life. Inside the cafe, Emma felt the warmth not only from the sunlight filtering through the windows, but from the renewed energy that pulsed through her little sanctuary. Since the court's favorable ruling, Emma and James had stepped into a new chapter. The threat that once hung over them like a storm cloud had finally passed, and with it came the freedom to dream again, together. The morning light spilled into the cafe as Emma arranged fresh flowers on the tables. Lucas sat at his usual spot, sketching pictures with crayons, his small brow furrowed in concentration. James was busy behind the counter, preparing espresso shots with practiced care. Emma watched James for a moment, the man who had become her anchor through turbulent times. His presence was steady, calming. She remembered the early days when their relationship was a fragile thread, tangled with doubts and fears. Now, that thread had strengthened into something unbreakable. James approached, wiping his hands on a towel. "We should think about expanding the menu," he suggested. "Maybe add some breakfast options?" Emma smiled.
I like the way you think.
"It's time to grow." Lucas looked up, eyes bright. "Can we add pancakes?"
James looked.
"Pancakes it is." The simple exchange filled the room with hope and promise, the promise of a future shaped by their shared efforts. Outside, the neighborhood had begun to notice the change in the cafe. What was once a quiet corner spot had become a gathering place for locals, a hub for friendships, laughter, and community spirit. Emma had started hosting small events, book readings, open mic nights, and charity drives. James helped organize, using his connections to bring in local artists and musicians. Together, they were weaving the cozy corner into the fabric of the neighborhood. One evening, after a successful poetry night, James and Emma stood by the door, watching guests filter out into the cool night. "I never imagined we'd come this far," Emma admitted, her voice soft. James smiled. "Neither did I. But I'm glad we did." She leaned into him, feeling the comfort of his arms. "We make a good team." "We make a great team," he corrected, pulling her closer. Yet, despite the happiness blooming around them, challenges remained. Emma often wrestled with lingering doubts, fears that the past could still haunt their future. James, too, grappled with balancing his business commitments and his growing role as a partner and father figure. Their journey was far from perfect, but their commitment to one another held firm. One afternoon, as Emma prepared for the cafe's first anniversary, James surprised her with a gift, a framed photo collage capturing moments from the past year, the messy paint days, Lucas's laughter, their quiet dinners, and snapshots of the community gathered inside the cafe. Emma's eyes filled with tears. "You made all this possible." James shook his head. "No, you did. I just stood by you." Lucas ran up, tugging at their hands. "Mom, Dad, look."
I drew US a super-héros.
Emma and James exchanged a look, smiling at the innocence and hope in their son's eyes. As the cafe celebrated its milestone, the small family felt a sense of accomplishment that transcended business success. They had built a home, not just of bricks and mortar but of trust, love, and shared dreams. Emma realized that the cozy corner was more than a cafe, it was a symbol of resilience and new beginnings. James took Emma's hand, leading her to the small stage they had set up for the anniversary celebration. "Here's to us," he said, raising a glass of sparkling cider. Emma clinked her glass gently. "To us, and to whatever comes next." The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: together, they could face it all. And in the heart of East London, under the warm glow of the cozy corner, a family was finally whole. The warmth of spring slowly gave way to the lingering humidity of early summer in East London, and with the season's change came new challenges for Emma, James, and Lucas. The cozy corner had become a cherished community spot, but life beyond the cafe's walls was never without complications. Emma had started to notice subtle changes in James. Once so present and attentive, he had begun spending longer hours at his other business ventures. The late-night phone calls became more frequent, and the moments they shared together grew sparse and fleeting. One evening, Emma sat alone at the cafe's worn oak table, the muted chatter of the last customers fading into the background. She glanced at the clock, her heart tightening as minutes ticked by without James's arrival. Her phone buzzed, lighting up with a message from James, "Running late. We'll be home soon." Emma sighed, reading the words that felt more like a consolation than a promise. She pushed aside the growing worry, reminding herself of the battles they had overcome. Yet, the unease lingered. Lucas was blissfully unaware of the strain between his parents, still bursting with energy as he played near the counter. His laughter was a balm to Emma's nerves, and she cherished every moment she could steal with him. The following weekend, Emma planned a family outing to Hyde Park, hoping to rekindle the warmth she feared was fading. They spent the day beneath the sprawling trees, Lucas chasing pigeons and James watching with a gentle smile. For a while, the world outside ceased to exist, replaced by the simple joy of togetherness. However, the illusion of normalcy shattered when Emma stumbled upon an unexpected discovery. One afternoon, while organizing paperwork at home, she found an email from a client addressed to James, hinting at negotiations that neither she nor Lucas had been told about. Confused and hurt, Emma confronted James that evening. "Why didn't you tell me about this?" she asked, voice trembling. James looked up from his dinner, weariness etched on his face.
"It's complicated, Emma.
Some things I have to handle on my own." "But we promised honesty," Emma replied. "Lucas and I deserve to be part of this." James ran a hand through his hair. "I'm trying to protect you both. Sometimes, it's easier if you don't know everything." Emma felt a surge of frustration. "I don't want to be protected from you.
You want to be trusted."
The silence stretched between them, heavy and unresolved. Days passed with awkward silences and half-spoken words. Emma questioned the foundation they had built. Had James's past caught up with him in ways she couldn't see? Was there a distance growing that neither could bridge? One evening, as the cafe closed, Lucas asked, "Mom, are you and Dad okay?" Emma forced a smile. "We're figuring things out, sweetheart." But deep inside, doubt gnawed at her. James, too, wrestled with his fears, the fear of losing Emma and Lucas, the fear of failing as a partner and provider. He knew his secrecy was eroding their trust, but his pride and past experiences held him back. He decided to make a change. The next morning, James arrived at the cafe early, carrying a thick folder of documents. He found Emma arranging pastries and approached her with a tentative smile. "I want to be more open," he said.
"Starting now."
Emma looked up, surprise and cautious hope mingling in her eyes.
James spread the papers across the counter.
"Here's everything I've been working on.
No more secrets." Emma's briscoqued.
It was a gesture, imperfect but sincere. That day marked a turning point. They began rebuilding trust, step by step, conversation by conversation. Their love, tested by challenges, grew stronger not in spite of the struggles but because of them. Lucas noticed the change, his eyes brightening with the return of warmth and laughter between his parents. The cozy corner remained a beacon, a place where love, honesty, and hope intertwined, offering not just coffee but a promise of second chances. The soft golden light of late summer filtered through the windows of the cozy corner, casting a warm glow over the familiar worn wooden tables and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Emma stood behind the counter, lost in thought as she watched Lucas play with a small wooden toy at a corner table. James was nearby, setting up a new display of pastries, but the comfortable ease they once shared felt tinged with a fragile uncertainty. For the first time in months, Emma allowed herself to consider what their future truly held. The legal battles were behind them, and the cafe was thriving, but beneath the surface lay questions neither had fully confronted. That afternoon, James arrived earlier than usual. His expression was guarded, his usual confident demeanor tempered by a quiet seriousness. Emma noticed immediately and felt a familiar knot of tension in her stomach. They locked eyes across the cafe, and without words, both knew it was time to have the conversation they had been avoiding. As the lunch crowd thinned, James approached the counter and lowered his voice. "Emma," he began, "we need to talk about us." Emma nodded, steadying herself. James took a breath. "I've been offered a chance to expand my business overseas. It's an incredible opportunity, but it would mean spending months away from here, away from you and Lucas." Emma's heart clenched. She had known James's work demanded sacrifices, but the thought of prolonged separation unsettled her deeply. "I want to be honest with you," James continued. "I don't want to lose what we've built. But I also can't ignore this chance." Emma swallowed her emotions, feeling both pride in his ambition and fear for their fragile family. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly. "But what about us? What about Lucas?" James reached out, gently taking her hand. "I want both. But I know it won't be easy." The days that followed were a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Emma wrestled with the idea of James leaving, the loneliness it would bring, the challenge of managing everything on her own again. Lucas sensed the change in atmosphere, asking innocent but pointed questions about his father's absence. James tried to reassure them, promising to stay connected, to return as often as possible. But promises could only stretch so far against the reality of distance and time. Emma found herself at a crossroads, torn between supporting James's dreams and protecting the newfound stability of their family. One evening, as they sat on a bench outside the cafe, watching the city lights flicker to life, Emma spoke with quiet determination. "If you go, it has to be with a plan, a way to keep us together." James nodded, his eyes reflecting both hope and hesitation. "I don't want to lose you either," he said. "Let's find a way." Together, they mapped out possibilities, video calls, scheduled visits, involving trusted friends to support Emma and Lucas. The plan wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Emma realized that love wasn't about holding on tightly but about letting each other grow, even if it meant facing uncertainty. As James prepared to leave for his trip, the three of them stood at the cafe door, holding each other tightly. "Stay safe," Emma whispered to James. "I will," he promised. "And I'll come back to you." Lucas hugged his father fiercely. "Don't forget us." James smiled through misty eyes. "Never." In the weeks that followed, Emma managed the cafe with renewed purpose, leaning on friends and the community that had embraced them. Video calls with James became their new routine, moments of laughter and shared stories bridging the miles. Though the distance was hard, it revealed the strength of their bond, a love resilient enough to survive separation and uncertainty. Emma often found herself reflecting on their journey, from strangers bound by a lease, to a family forged in trials, hope, and courage. The future remained uncertain, but for the first time, she felt ready to face it. Months had passed since James left London to pursue the opportunity overseas. The rhythms of the cozy corner had settled into a new normal for Emma and Lucas, quieter in some ways, but filled with the same determination and love that had built their life from scratch. Emma found strength in the cafe's hum, in the smiles of regular customers, and in the steady growth of the business. Yet, each evening when she closed up shop, a space beside her chair remained empty, a quiet reminder of James's absence. Lucas had grown taller, his eyes still bright with curiosity and hope. He had adapted to the new routine, though sometimes at night, he would ask softly if his dad was coming home soon. Emma would hold him close and whisper assurances, though her own heart sometimes ached with uncertainty. One crisp autumn afternoon, as leaves painted the streets golden, Emma stood behind the counter arranging fresh flowers. The bell above the door chimed, and her heart skipped a beat when she saw James step inside. He looked different, softer, more grounded, but his eyes held the familiar warmth that had drawn her to him from the start. "Emma," he said quietly. She smiled, moving toward him. "James," she replied, her voice steady despite the whirlwind inside. Lucas ran to him, wrapping his small arms around his father's legs. James lifted him up, laughing with genuine joy. "I missed you both more than I can say," James whispered. Emma watched them, feeling the knot in her chest loosen. The moment was real, not just a reunion but a homecoming. They spent the evening catching up, sharing stories of the months apart, the challenges, the triumphs, and the longing. James confessed the struggles he faced overseas, how the distance tested his resolve and deepened his appreciation for what he had left behind. Emma shared how the cafe and Lucas had been her anchor, her reason to keep pushing forward. Their conversation flowed easily, healing the silent spaces that time had created. The following days marked a new beginning. James took a step back from his overseas commitments to focus on what mattered most, rebuilding their life together. He joined Emma at the cafe each morning, helping with the busy rush, playing with Lucas, and planning for the future. They talked openly about their dreams, fears, and the work needed to balance their personal lives and ambitions. The scars from the past remained but no longer defined them. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the city, James led Emma and Lucas to a small table in the corner of the cafe. He pulled out a small box and opened it to reveal a delicate silver necklace. "For you," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "A symbol of home, where you are is where I want to be." Emma's eyes filled with tears as she accepted the gift. "Thank you," she whispered, "for coming back." James took her hand gently. "I'm here. For good." Their journey had been far from easy, filled with battles both external and internal. But through resilience, trust, and unwavering love, they had built something enduring. The cozy corner was more than a cafe, it was a testament to second chances and the power of connection.
Emma, James, and Lucas stood together in the heart of East London. A family forged by hardship, united by hope.
And as the city lights twinkled outside, they knew the future held endless possibilities. Together,